Morning, everyone. Welcome to Saturday and the start of my first reading vlog. I thought today would be kind of a good couple of days to film one of these. I am reading the start of a trilogy I think I'm going to love, and having kind of invested in some library book rentals, I think I want to start using a Kindle as opposed to the tablet I've been using to read, so I'm going to be making that swap. And I'm spending a bit of time on the road on Sunday, so I'll get a lot of good reading time in. I'm thinking I'll have lots to report out. I'm currently reading Foundryside by Robert Jackson Bennett, which is a really interesting sort of thief heist story in a world where there's sort of magical coding. I'll tell you more about the book that I'm reading and show you around with some of the other fun live stuff we're doing this weekend in the other clips. Hey guys, just got back from the Chicago Botanic Gardens where we saw their annual orchid show. I'd never been before and it was as amazing as everyone says it is. On our way back, we stopped and got some milk tea. I'm a huge fan, so I'm gonna cozy up with a warm drink, read a book, maybe just kind of cuddle up and watch some YouTube videos, and I will check in with you later while I'm setting up my Kindle. Look what's arrived. Let's take a peek inside. Oh my gosh, it's so small and so light. I'll compare it with what I've been reading with lately, but it's insane how light this is and how small it feels in my hands. I'm so excited to have something that's a lot more comfortable to read with digitally. So just to offer sort of a quick comparison, this is the tablet I've been reading on. It's my fiance's. He's had it for years and years and years. First of all, it's perfectly functional. It's a little outdated, a little slow to interface with, but really it's just quite big and heavy for reading. Like, I have to really kind of find a comfortable position to, hold it up over a long period of time, especially at night while reading. And because it's a tablet, the screen is still quite bright. So, when I'm reading at night, it is still that screen time, which I'm trying to avoid. And when I'm traveling, like in the car, often it's too bright outside to really read the screen very comfortably. Like, I often have to turn the brightness all the way up, and even then I'm kind of like squinting to try to make out the words. It's enormous compared to this. And this is also just like incredibly lightweight. And so I'm really excited to have the Kindle now, because I think it'll make, that bedtime reading more relaxing on my eyes. It will make that travel reading easier in sunlight, and it will just make my overall reading experience a lot more comfortable when it comes to like what device I'm holding in my hand. So I'm really excited about this, and I think it'll be pretty easy to set up. I bought it through Amazon, and they've already like sent me an email with really simple setup instructions. So hopefully this will be, easy peasy. Okay, it's been a little bit of time. We kind of decompressed when we got home, and I was able to set up my Kindle. It was super easy. You just kind of open the app on your phone and can hit a simple setup setting, and then you power on the new device, you enter your language and country of choice, and then it auto syncs with your existing account. So it was super fast. It took like 2 minutes, and I now have the book I'm reading on my Kindle, which is so exciting. I still am not over how teeny tiny it is and how light it is to hold while I'm reading, which is just so exciting. I want to just talk a little bit about why I'm reading books digitally more now and kind of where that came from. So I've been using my fiance's tablet to read more digital books through the library. I got a library card when I moved to Chicago, but I didn't really use it for much for a long time. So what I think that I've found, which a lot of people probably experience, is that I am a sucker for books. Like, I love to get excited about new books that are out, and I often will purchase books at a much faster rate than I can read them. And I do really not like that. I want to read all the books that I buy. I want to know that I have a collection of books that I love. So recently, I've been trying to either listen to the book on audio or rent it digitally from the library first. And then if I love the book, especially if it's the first book in a series, then I invest in the book so that I can add it to my collection and lend it out to friends. Or in the case of a series, I will then buy the full series and finish reading the book series in physical copy. But I'm just hoping that this will sort of slow down my buying a little bit and make my buying more intentional. So anyways, I'm really hopeful that having the Kindle will kind of encourage me to continue this new habit of renting books from the library first or listening to them on audio first, and then deciding if I'm going to buy them. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about what I'm reading, kind of give you the synopsis of the book and where I'm at, kind of starting off with this vlog. Urban fantasy book with a setting that's not unlike sort of Venetian Italy. It's all about these big, powerful merchant houses who run a city. And the magic system is really interesting. The premise is that you can sort of magically code instructions onto objects that changes how they interact. So an example in the opening of the book is that you can scribe, is like the word for coding, onto the wheel of a cart that it is going down a hill. And so that wheel then thinks that it has the natural momentum of something rolling downhill, and it can then be used to power a carriage without a horse, because it's constantly rolling and will stop when you command it to. That's the premise. It's a really interesting magic system. And we follow a main character who is a thief by trade. She has a more complicated background that you begin to pick up on. And then there are some other characters who get some more prominent voices in the story as well. Our story opens with kind of a heist gone wrong. Our heroine steals something that's really valuable and then realizes she has kind of made an enemy of her client, and this person seems to be very powerful and is willing to do anything to make sure that no one knows anything about the object that she stole, and kind of all kinds of crazy events unravel from there. Something that I didn't know about when I picked this book up is that it also has this excellent sort of companion-like character. I won't say too much because I don't want to give anything away, but the sort of companion-like character follows our heroine for a lot of the book, and he reminds me a lot of Calcifer from Howl's Moving Castle. He's got this really funny voice who adds a lot of levity to the story. Also, like, builds a really sincere relationship with our main character, and so we kind of get to see her soften with this companion, and we learn more about her and get to hear her vulnerabilities in her conversations with him. So that's just a really fun dynamic. I'm about 225 pages into the book, which is about halfway. So I'm starting this vlog a little late, but I'm loving it. The book has been jam-packed. There's been a great balance in pacing of opening on a high-stakes or action-packed scene, leaving a little room to decompress, offering a little plot information and kind of setup, and then there's another big moment of action. So I've really enjoyed how fast-paced it is. I've also really loved the characters. Our main character is really interesting. She is sort of a classic thief archetypal character, right? She's tough on the outside, but has a really interesting and compelling backstory that, you know, leads to a life of thieving. And she is just put in conversation with characters who are so different than her. So we have another main character whose whole shtick is that he's trying to sort of start a public police force. So obviously he's sort of like the antithesis of a thief. And then we're also put with characters who are sort of experts in scribing. So we get a lot of really interesting, detailed perspective on the world and the magic system through the eyes of that expert. I think the story has a lot of great commentary on wealth inequality, folks who don't live sort of in the immediate protection and purview of a merchant house, who all of whom sort of wall off their communities. Then you live in these sort of public, squalid, impoverished places, and there's no sort of law and order to be found in those environments, which makes people very vulnerable, and leads to all sorts of really visible inequities. I also have really enjoyed the amount of sort of folklorish world building that's going on. The sort of setting and premise of the magic is that this is a version of the magic that is very ancient, that is very modern use of very ancient magic. And there's lots of allusions to a previous society from a much older time that had a much more powerful way of harnessing this magic. And so there's really interesting, just almost fairy tale-like stories that are woven throughout the book that give it a really folklorish feeling, which is great because I don't think you get that sense of folklore and ancient history often with urban fantasy settings, right? Often I think we would associate that kind of fairy tale-like feeling with much more of a cottagecore, bucolic fantasy setting. So I'm really enjoying that as well. I will check in with you all later once I've had a little bit more reading done today. Morning, everyone. Happy Sunday. We are hitting the road first thing this morning to travel for my grandpa's birthday brunch. So he lives a couple hours away. We will be spending a lot of time on the road this Sunday. I'm hoping to get a lot of reading in on that drive. And when we get home this afternoon, probably more like evening actually, I will report back on the reading that I got done. Hey guys, we are back from our road trip to visit my grandpa on his birthday. It was a nice afternoon and now it is well into the evening, so we are just trying to kind of wrap up our weekend with the normal chores. Jake's on a grocery run and I'm kind of starting some meal prep for lunches this week. I'm gonna try to get a little bit of tidying done. So I thought I would kind of give you all a quick update on my reading and then just kind of wrap up the weekend. So on our drive, I got a lot of reading done on the way down, and I definitely took a nap on the way back. So I got probably another 15% or so of the book read. I'm sitting right around 70%. And things are really moving and shaking right now. I think we're sort of really in the final heist of the story. All of our characters have come together. They sort of have unified around this common enemy. We've pulled in some of our side characters and sort of built out the team a little bit. And our main character, Sanchia, is now fully working her way into this sort of impossible to penetrate building called the Mountain, and is sort of beginning that final quest. So it is action-packed, and I'm really loving how sort of the end game of the story is wrapping up, or at least starting to reveal itself. Who knows how the heist itself will go. We've gotten a lot more on all of the characters' backstories, and I think they've all found sort of a lot of like common humanity between them, even though they're coming from incredibly different worlds in many ways. And so I have really loved that sort of deepening of each of their personal dynamics. And we are definitely setting up, I think, for what will play out in the later books. It feels like sort of political revolution might be brewing, especially as these massive, like, ancient sources of power are uncovered, and it seems like people are trying to maybe use those sources of power. So I'm really, really excited, not only about how this story is going, but I feel like I can start to see where the story could go from here. So I'm loving it. I feel like the last 30% of the book could really wrap up quickly. I tend to find that the ends of books go by much quicker than the beginning. I also wanted to flag that I'm listening to an audiobook. I think you probably saw a clip of me yesterday doing my nails. I'll also probably be listening to that audiobook as I do some meal prep and cleaning this evening. I try to usually have an audiobook going at the same time that I'm reading a physical or digital book. So I'm currently listening to Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers, and I just adore her books. I feel like people on BookTube mostly talk about The Long Way to a Small Angry Plant, which is the first book in her Wayfarer series. But she is a sci-fi author who really, really writes with that sort of cozy, heartwarming, humanity-first storytelling approach, and I just love her. Like, if you're looking for reads that will make you feel hopeful and will grapple, I think, really honestly and authentically with really just like what it means to be human and in many different forms, and she's just great. She's just great. I love her so much, and I think this might be the last of her books that I have read that are currently out that are only Becky Chambers books. I think she's contributed to a lot of like sci-fi anthologies, but this might be one of the few remaining books that was written solely by her that's out there. So I've got to do some more digging, but I have completed the Wayfarer series. I've read the first 2 Monk and Robot books that are out, and To Be Taught If Fortunate seems to be set like in the same universe as all of those other books, but is a much more near future book. And the premise is basically that as humans from Earth begin their space travel journey, we first really learn to successfully go far distances, not by making technology to manage sort of human need on long travel, but by adapting the human body. It's called sonoforming. And so they sort of genetically engineer astronauts to go on these like really crazy long flights to visit other planets and sort of take in what other life in the universe looks like. So it's very early days of wider space travel for human society. And it just follows these 4 astronauts on their sort of like 3 major planet journeys, and it seems to kind of track what it's like to, you know, visit those other places and want to understand them but not impact them, while leaving all the people you love at home. And like kind of how Earth changes while they're gone seems to be kind of where the story is going now. Like I'm also in sort of the final stages of that book. So I'm really loving it. It's quite different than the other books of hers that I've read, but I think in the last hour of the audiobook and really loving it. So hopefully I'll wrap that up here tonight. Morning! I am off to work on a very snowy Monday morning, and I'm going to listen to my audiobook on the train. I will check in later this afternoon. Okay, back from work for the day, and on my way home I did finish my audiobook, so I thought I would sit down and kind of recap To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. And on my way home I also saw that I got some book mail, so I thought I would share what I had picked up with all of you. So, I feel like I gave a brief summary earlier in this video, but not a great summary of what To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers is. It's a novella, and she's actually written several novellas kind of in her larger universe. This one is about 5 hours on audio, so pretty short. And it is quite different from the other books in her Wayfarer series, and even her Monk and Robot series, both of which are set really far in the future, like hundreds and hundreds of years in the future. This book is a much more near future book, in the next like 100 years or so, and it follows astronauts who have been sort of genetically engineered to be able to sort of expand human space travel, and to be able to go on those years long journeys just to get to a planet. And it follows 4 astronauts who are on a crew of these genetically altered astronauts, and they are traveling to a series of worlds over the course of their journey. And they are sort of sponsored by this coalition that was formed back on Earth that's not a government agency or a private company, but sort of a like giant grassroots project. And it follows them across, I think, 4 planets, and just the various experiences they have, like the really wide variety of things that they find across those planets, the scientific process they go through in cataloging new life, talks a lot about, you know, what it means to be human, exploring the rest of space, and how to leave the most gentle footprint possible, right? Like to not interfere with the life that they're studying in as many ways as possible. It was really good. It was quite a different tone to her other books. It had a lot of the same sort of questions about, you know, humanness and human existence and connection to each other, and, you know, how we understand our own like ethical models and the sort of general wondering at space. But it did feel a bit different, and the audiobook narrator was different as well. I really liked the book overall. I would say I would rank it lower among the books of hers that I've read, which isn't an insult. Like, it'll probably still be a 3.75 4-star book for me. But I have just loved everything Becky Chambers has written and that I have read thus far. So, you know, it had tough competition from her other books, which I've loved. I thought in particular its ending was interesting. It kind of posed a series of questions to the reader. And often in books that are addressing the reader directly, you like open in addressing the reader, and then you sort of fall into the story. And then you're sort of reminded that the author is talking to you at the end. Sometimes it's like intermixed, but in this book it was very much like beginning and end. And so I'd sort of forgotten that it really was a story like for me, you know, the reader back on Earth, right? And so I thought that it was a very effective tool to kind of wrap the story and leave you thinking. So I finished that book on my way home, and then I had just like a nice kind of snowy walk back to the apartment and was able to kind of do a little reflecting. On my way home, I saw that I had a package. So these are 2 books that I'd ordered. I order books a lot through Abe Books. It's a secondhand store, so you can get books at a much better cost, and of course they're secondhand, so there's like less kind of like waste involved, I guess. And I thought I would open those up and show them to you. So the first is The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers, which is the 4th and final book in the Wayfarer series. I would say that I liked this book probably least of the 4 books. Again, that's not saying much. I still really highly rated it. But it's a really interesting story on a sort of empty planet that is used as a stop along in sort of a long old route. So in most modern routes in space travel, you can sort of get directly from A to B. On some of those older routes, though, they couldn't travel such long distances. And so there were these sort of stop along planets where you would kind of like make one stretch of the journey and then another stretch, and in the middle you'd stop and you'd rest. And the story starts at this little hotel with the day's guests. Nobody plans to stay for more than a day, and then they all end up having to stay a little longer than expected. And it just kind of explores how to spend time with strangers and people who are really different than you, and how to do that respectfully and with curiosity. And it explores some really interesting dynamics that had been like implied at other points in the books, some really interesting things that happen in different alien species. It just gives us more room to explore those. And, you know, what it means to have a home or to not have a home. There is definitely a lot of galactic politics that happen in this book, but through the lens of everyday people, and debates that happen through the lens of everyday people who are living the impact of those galactic politics. So it was really good, just wasn't my favorite, and I'm very glad to add this to my collection. Second is A Prayer for the Crowned Shy, which is the second and I think final, at least right now, book in the Monk and Robot series. I love the Monk and Robot books so much. They are set on a recovering Earth, so far-flung future after sort of a big industrial age where we had built these sort of autonomous and intelligent robots to do a lot of work for us. Those robots become sentient, and this poses like a big sort of ethical quandary for the humans who were using them for their labor. And so the robots all just kind of pick up and leave and they go exploring the rest of the world. And humans spend the next foreseeable future working on fixing the Earth that they had almost destroyed. So it's a lot about what our homes and living look like when trying to heal from climate change, in a way. And the book follows two people, a tea monk and a robot, who meet in the woods. And the first book really follows their time in the woods, which is predominantly where the robot lives. And the second book follows the two of them kind of back in human civilization and introducing the robot to people and the way people live. And they're just both so heartwarming and so full of wonder at the little things in life, which I've really, really loved. And there's a lot of reflection in these books on, is it okay just to exist? And do I need to have a purpose? And what if my purpose changes? So grappling with a lot of those themes that I think a lot of us grapple with in our day-to-day lives, or at least can have moments in our life where suddenly you're not sure if the way you're living is enough. So it's just great. I highly recommend everything Becky Chambers writes, but particularly if you need like a hug, these books are a hug on paper. Really like chicken noodle soup for the soul style reading. So I'm excited to have both of these in my hands. And there they go. The books have found a new place on my bookshelf, and Becky Chambers now almost takes up an entire shelf on this bookshelf, which is great. I love that for her. But I'm really grateful to, have this collection complete. Okay, happy Wednesday and welcome to the wrap up of this reading vlog. I thought I would show you all that the case for my Kindle arrived yesterday. I like that it has a little kickstand and it has a nice little strap to hold it, which is great. And I did finish Foundryside last night, so I thought I would recap my final thoughts on the book and kind of wrap up this reading vlog. I really liked how Foundryside wrapped. I thought that the story was really interesting and engaging and well-paced the whole time. I will say the magic systems complexities and the limits of our characters' understanding of that system kind of makes the ending a little harder to follow than the rest of the book. But we've definitely set up a really high stakes scenario for the rest of the trilogy, and I'm definitely going to keep reading. I'm really excited about this book series as a whole. I really enjoy the magic system. I love the heist structure of the story, and I really like where I think it's going. We're definitely leaning into a complex political environment and talking a lot about power and control and wealth. There's a lot of themes around autonomy and enslavement in this book, and I didn't really know that going in, and so I think it just has room to have a lot of really complicated discussions in this really fun urban fantasy setting. So I really loved it. I gave the book, I think, like a 4.5 stars. So it had a lot of fun, but it didn't land like a 5-star spot for me. And I've already reserved the next book at the library. Thanks so much for joining me for my first ever reading vlog. Let me know what you all like in reading vlogs generally. I know I always enjoy seeing a mix of somebody's real life and kind of hearing their thoughts about a book as they're proceeding through it. In this vlog, we got to see, reading the start of this new trilogy with Foundryside. I also wrapped the audiobook for To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers and started out a new reading technology with my Kindle, all of which was really exciting, and I'm hopeful to make other videos like this in the future. So please leave me your thoughts, let me know what you're reading, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.